And it's Kim Kreitzer for Cam Vets Media. We cover cadets, midship, and the military veterans proudly since 2008. And I'm in Washington, D.C. today, actually, for tomorrow's Association of the U.S. Army Aviation Conference, and looking forward to that. And then we've got a Army's second football game of the year. They won on Friday night, 42-7 over Lehigh, and they'll play their first game in the American Athletic Conference on on Saturday at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton. So let me introduce our huddle for tonight. We've got calling in from South Florida, and that is Richard Miller. How are you?
Very well, Ken. Good evening.
Okay, good to see you. Chuck Donegan out on Long Island. How are you?
I'm good, Ken. How about you?
Very good. And calling in from the B Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama, we've got Colonel Sam Houston from the class of '87. Colonel, how are you?
I'm great, Ken. Looking forward to a trip to Boca Raton.
Okay, so you're going to be down there. And calling in from South Jersey, we have from the class of '92, Steve Shalou. How are you, Steve?
Doing fantastic.
Very good. And calling in from Pelham, New York, with this great photo of Blackhawk and Chinook helicopters, we have Jack McGurk.
Hey, how are you? Great to be here.
Actually, I'm going to get accused of mislabeling what those helicopters. One is what, a Dakota in front? Is that what that first one is, Steve? That's leading up.
It is. That's what the soup uses, and you got an Apache there in the middle, and then a Chinook with a Blackhawk.
And a Blackhawk. Okay, so we got to get our aviation expert to run that down. Okay, well, season got off to a good start Friday night at Mikey Stadium, a 42-7 win. Came out with 7-7 the first quarter, and then I said this to Coach Munkin today. I said it to Coach Offensive Coordinator Cody Worley when we did our talk. I thought it was a methodical performance by the offense, consistent, not a lot of big plays, but consistent production. And the defense played well enough to throw a shutout after the first quarter, and really limited what Lehigh could do. Okay, let's get everybody's thoughts on the game. Let's start with Colonel Sam Houston. What was your thought about the game?
Very little to nitpick about with regards to the game. So let's take a look at it from the offensive side of the ball. Last week when we had our huddle, my keys to the game were that the offense be able to sustain drives, finish drives with touchdowns, win the time of possession, don't commit any turnovers, and limit the penalties. So I think we can check the box on every one of those for the offense, because they did score on they had the ball 7 times. One doesn't count because that basically was just running out a little bit of time at the end of the half. But they scored on 6 out of 6 drives. They scored touchdowns, and they won the time of possession. I think they only had 1 penalty, which was a illegal procedure penalty, I believe, in the second half. And they had a number of very good plays. They ran the ball well to the perimeter. Noah Short just was really a playmaker in the game. Udo, we knew what he was capable of coming into the game. You know, he had three backs, including Bryson Daly, who had over 70 yards rushing. And I'd like to also give kudos to Hayden Reed, who, if I'm not mistaken, Hayden Reed is someone who entered the transfer portal last year after the season, but he came back, and I'm really glad to see him in the backfield, because the kid runs hard, and he's run the B-back position before, so he's a tough runner, and I'm just glad to see him in the mix as well. So my opinion of this offense is that it can only get better from here, so long as they limit the mistakes. And there was one of those plays that I was talking about last week where Bryson Daly tried to do a little too much, and he threw an errant pitch that could have very easily turned into a very costly turnover. But instead, in just the way the ball was bouncing this past Friday, it bounced off the hands of the pitch, and it was not an illegal forward pass, which is fortunate. And when it bounced off the hands of the pitch, it bounced forward and out of bounds, which turned out to be a positive gain for Army on the play. So even though it was a fumble, it turned into like about a 7-yard gain on the play. But other than that, I don't have much to say other than great job offense. Moving to the defense, my other key to the game was stop the run. And my prediction for the score was 59-7, as I recall. And I got to tell you, if Army's defense had forced 3 and outs, the score would have been 59-7. But they did not force a single 3 and out. They struggled against the run. Frequently, they were out of position. The defensive line did not create the type of bottleneck to the linemen that we were hoping that they would be, which meant that linemen were able to block at the second level, which was bottling up linebackers. There were missed assignments. There were some missed tackles. Ultimately, it was a bend but don't break defense, which is fine, and we've seen this a lot. But this is where the biggest amount of improvement is going to have to happen. You cannot give up 170 yards rushing every game. That just isn't going to work, especially when we start getting into the meat of the AAC schedule. And as you noticed, although there were some quarterback hurries, I don't believe there were any sacks. And really, it was because the defense never really forced Lehigh into a one-dimensional approach to their offense. By not taking away the rushing attack, they were not able to just pin their ears back and focus on the passing game. And that's what we were really hoping would happen. And they allowed 2 fourth-down conversions. That's not a good thing to allow in defense. But when the chips were down, the defense figured out a way to make a stop, whether it was a turnover or they managed to stop them and turn them over on downs, but not after they had taken some time off the clock. And so Army did win the time of possession, but they didn't dominate the time of possession. Army had the ball for about 33 minutes, and Lehigh had the ball for just shy of 27 minutes. So you up that time of possession a little bit more, and there probably would have been 2 or 3 more touchdowns thrown up by the offense. Then I do want to just mention special teams. And before I do that, I want to give a special shout out to Todd Britton. Todd is the father of the young man who handled the kickoff duties on Saturday's game and reached out to me about this coming weekend. And I hope to be able to link up with Todd and some of the other parents this weekend while we're in Boca Raton. Special teams, great job. We all saw the fake punt. I predicted it where I was watching because it was 4th and 2 on Army's very first drive of the season. And I could not believe that Monken was actually going to punt. So I was telling everyone at my table watching, he's going to fake it. He's going to fake it. He's going to fake it. And he did. So glad the play worked. When I watched the replay, I got to tell you, there was an argument that could be made for a possible not clipping. What's the high-low block? I'm having a brain. There was a close argument to be made for a personal foul on the blocking there, but I think that the reason it was not called is because one of the blockers was hit by the defender into the lower half of another defender who was still in contact with another Army blocker. So
let me ask you a question on that. Because Coach Monken said in the post game, he didn't really want to punt and he didn't want to not score a touchdown in that situation. You know, he wanted the team to feel like they could complete a drive. But did he tip his hand and use up fake punt when he might have wanted to save it for later in the year? Now everybody's going to be looking for the fake punt.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. You know, our football is a game of chess. And your sleight of hand is to be able to call a play when when the other team least expects that play. And there will be other opportunities in the season probably where there's going to be situational downs where a trick play like that fake punt will work again because the team's just not going to expect it. So every now and then there's that time that the guard gets let down. And by the way, I was thinking of chop block. There was an argument for a chop block on that play, but anyway, great game. And they won the game they were supposed to win out of the gate, and now it's on to FAU.
Okay, let's move on to Steve Shalou. What were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, to answer your question about the fake punt, you have to have been living under a rock for the last 10 years to not know that Jeff Monk is not afraid to run a fake punt.
I hadn't watched that game film.
He probably does it
I talked to Andy Thomas today, and he said, Lehigh lined up just the way they thought they would for to have a chance to do a fake punt. So Lehigh didn't even watch that game film.
Yeah, anything Army does is really not about surprise. It's going to be about execution, right? So, if they give us the look for a fake punt, we're going to take it. Even Monk mentioned that the up back had the opportunity to call it off if they did get into that particular scouting look. So we took advantage of that. But the keys for me, and I'll talk mostly offense here, and I'm going to glowingly talk about the offensive line. The Pro Football Focus had 3 of the Army offensive linemen in the top 15 players in the nation in terms of being graded out. We had 3 of Army players in the top 15 of the nation. Brady Small was number 2 player of assignment in the country. So that speaks volumes in terms of
number 2 in the country. I mean,
number 2 in the country from Pro Football Focus.
God.
So, that's first game, that's executing. Again, I know it's Lehigh, but you got to it's still a player there. You got to put a hat on the number. You got to execute your assignments, and you got to do it, fantastic, and so they did that. And that's something to build upon. Looking at the defense, we are going to have to control the line of scrimmage and control that ball and hold on to it, because it's going to take a little bit of time for our defense to get there, and it did last year, for them to find their groove and to really get to the point where they're going to be able to stop, a team like an FAU that we're going to play this week. So we just got to get the ball out of the hands of an opposing offense. When you're scoring 6 out of 7 drives and you're scoring all touchdowns, that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on an opponent's offense, especially a quarterback, when he thinks, one, I'm going to get fewer series, and then number 2, I got to be successful in their series because they're going to run the ball down our throats and they're going to chew up 8 minutes doing it. So that tenses up a quarterback, knowing that they have to be super accurate, because they're not going to get 14 to 16 series a game. They might get 8, they might get 7. So that's going to be super important that we continue down that path. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to come up against FAU. I not a lot of surprises on offense. I was surprised by Short, his ability to switch over from a slot receiver to a slot, quote unquote, slot back, and how seamless that looked for him. Udo looked really comfortable in that traditional single back or full back look. And he made a super inspiring run for a touchdown. And the quarterback, albeit with that one play that Sam made mention to, the quarterback ran a very sound offense, and I was excited about the number of times we got the ball outside with the pitch. I think we need to do just a little bit better job in terms of eliminating that pitch key, meaning maybe hold on to it one beat more so that person that they're pitching off of doesn't get a chance to do a little bounce outside and get that running back. Lehigh couldn't do that, and FAU will be able to do that. They'll have the athletes to be able to juke you and head back outside and run our one of our running backs down. So we really got to eliminate that person at the point of attack. But all in all, you can't complain about what we did on offense coming out of the gate. And I'm excited to see us make that big step from the first week to the second week, because that's when you make your most improvement. And I'm looking forward to seeing that in person this week. Ken, you're on mute.
I'm still in the hotel lobby, the Hilton Garden Inn in Arlington, Virginia. And
I'd never know because looks like you're outside with an American flag flying.
I'll have to change my backdrop. But more importantly, we talked to Coach Munkin today. You can hear the talk. And he really talked about how good FAU is. They've got a bunch of transfer players. We've got 2 transfer players from LSU playing. And so Coach Munkin was, impressed with their performance against Michigan State, and just said, they're going to be playing. They've got great athletes on that team. And what I had forgotten, and I didn't pick up on when I was at the media day in Texas, in the other Arlington actually, was their coach Tom Herman, who was the former coach of Houston and Texas, and took the Longhorns to a Big 12 championship and a Sugar Bowl win, and apparently wasn't good enough. So was gone from Texas, and then is at Florida Atlantic. Steve or Sam, any familiarity with Coach Herman from Florida Atlantic?
Yeah, and I'll take a little bit on this. When the last coach was fired, and I know some people in the athletic department down at FAU, their athletic director was actually at Army. Their number 2 guy, Mike Griffin, was at Army also, and I've kept in touch with them. And the best coaches available at the time of their search. I mean, Harmon was the guy at the top of the list, and it was a huge pull for them. And when you add up all of the success that they've had on the hardwood for basketball, it's really become a destination for to put Florida Atlantic on the map. And now they're starting to get facilities and money, and they're starting to get some really good players in big sports. So and Houston, this guy was a dynamo, enough so that he was able to grab a spot coaching the Longhorns, and he had some mixed success. And I think the NIL and all the rest of that has allowed the Longhorns to go to the next. Their NIL money is ridiculous in terms of what they're getting for their players, and it's allowed them to really get the players that they have today.
That's at Florida Atlantic has got NIL money.
No, I'm talking about Texas. Right after Harmon left, and I don't think he was. If he was there 2 years later, I think he would have had a much better opportunity than he had at the time. He was still in between, and so he's a super successful coach. He won't be at Florida Atlantic very long. I can tell you that he will turn this program around, and he will be back in a Power 5 school, coaching and doing great things. I got a tremendous amount of respect for who he is as a coach, and his players love to play for him. And I'm excited to see what he'll do for FAU after this week, of course. But I want to see them to be super successful.
Well, when Steve, you bring up a good point about NIL money and its impact. Do you think a school like Florida Atlantic has a sizable NIL budget and it's helping them attract players?
Well, I do know that they will be advertising on their field. They're going to have there are some programs out there like Oklahoma State that's going to be putting barcodes on their helmets for you to be able to donate right from TV, and then Florida Atlantic is thinking outside the box and will have advertisement on their field for NIL collectives that they're trying to build up, and they're running up against a little bit of headwinds because the university doesn't have the prestigious history and the graduates that a lot of these other programs do, but it's got to start somewhere. And I think through basketball and through the winning that they could do during football, that they can at least get themselves to a point where they're pretty competitive in the group of five type realm. I think they'll do pretty well. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Boca to go to school? I mean, it's a heck of a place to go to school, and if you've got success on the hardwood, you got success on the football field, you're going to start bringing in undergrad, and the university will grow. I mean, just look what's going on in Colorado in terms of the number of applicants and other things, because they have a new life into their program. So I think they're going to do well. They'll be well poised in that second tier of schools to be able to have a good NIL program.
Well, their quarterback, Cam Fancher, did I say that correctly? 116 yards, 1 TD, 2 interceptions, ran for 67 yards against Michigan State. And they've got a big-time receiver, Omari Hayes, 5 catches on the year, on the opening game. And they've got a big-time linebacker named Jackson Ambush, number 43. He's got five tackles, 10 with assists. So they've got some players. Is this like an example of a team that has used transfer portal to really upgrade themselves in a year? From last year, they, had a modest season. They were 4-8, 3-5 in the AAC. They had wins against Monmouth, Tulsa, South Florida, which is pretty good, at Charlotte, and they lost the last 4 of the year. So, Sam, any thoughts on Florida Atlantic?
Yeah, this is a good. Florida Atlantic is a great example of why in the NIL age you can't like last week, and we're speculating about Army season and the schedule, and I always cringe when I hear people say, well, this team, they've got kind of an easy schedule this year, and I'm my thought is, well, what are you basing that on? And it's like, well, I mean, the teams they're playing, I mean, look at how they did last year, and last year is irrelevant. Because of the transfer portal and NIL, it's very possible for teams like Florida Atlantic to completely rebuild in a year and be a different, be a completely different team than they were a year ago. So their past season does not equal this season's success. So, I realize that the limited game film that Army's got to go off of is going to be their game against Michigan State. And then, watching their game film from last year. But come Saturday, Florida Atlantic they're going to be ready to play. And you're going to see a different Florida Atlantic team than what you were watching last year. And that's going to include not only the players on the field, but, how well they execute and how well they bring it. They come to the game on Saturday to win. They're not coming there to walk off the field and feel like they got a moral victory. They come to win, and they want to beat Army. So I believe that this game is going to be a lot tougher than the game this past Friday. And especially on the defensive side of the ball, Army is going to have to play a lot better than they did against Lehigh, because my understanding is that Florida Atlantic's quarterback is one of those dual threat quarterbacks that has been historically the kind of guy that gives Army fits. And a classic example would be maybe the Boston College game last year. So to answer your question, yes, I do believe that NIL, as Steve said, maybe not to the same extent that you would see at a bigger program like Texas or the kingpins like Alabama and Georgia and those guys, but sure, it is an opportunity both through the portal and through the NIL to rebuild rapidly your team from one season to the next with very quality players. We're not talking about 2 and 3 athletes from high school. We're talking about people who are coming from bigger programs looking for a place where they can start.
Okay.
And
Well,
Ken, a couple of quick things on that, Ken. You look at a roster. When I look at a roster, I'm looking at, especially when it comes for transfer portals. If I see a bunch of players that are coming from bigger programs down to an FAU, let's say you mentioned the LSU team. team members. And, and so were they not performing at LSU and now they're moving to an FAU? And what type of player are you going to get there? Was it an attitude problem? Was it a just not getting playing time problem? Were they not living up to their potential? Or I'll look at, did they come from Shippensburg State? Did they come from University of Maine and step up because they played better than what they were recruited to do? And they were super successful and hungry, and they're moving up to the next level. Interesting on FAU's roster, there's a mixture of both. If you look at their defensive squad, you've got a mixture of University of Maine and Shippensburg, and you got these other schools that are lesser schools in FAU that these players are coming and stepping up into. I actually fear them more than somebody stepping down from, let's say, a Florida State or an LSU, because they may have had a sordid past in those schools. So this has got a really good mixture. They've got quite a few of transfers in here if you look at their roster, but the number of players that stepped up to FAU is high, and that's concerning to me.
Okay. Let's go, Richard. Do you have how the top 10 did last week?
Yes, I do have the games from last week, Ken. Number 10, Florida State lost to Georgia Tech 24-21. Also, you have number 11, Missouri 51-0 over Murray State. Number 22, Kansas 48-3 over Lindenwood. On Saturday, it was the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs creaming number 14 Clemson 34-3. Number 4 Texas 52-0 over Colorado State. Number 8 Penn State 34-12 over West Virginia. Number 25 Iowa 40-0 over Illinois State. Number 19 Miami 41-17 over Florida. And also number 9 Michigan 30-10 over Fresno State.
Okay, very good, Richard. Thank you. Jack McGurk, do you have how our friends at the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy did this on opening week?
I do. I'll start off with the Naval Academy. Navy showing off their new Millennial Wing T offense, ran up 437 yards total offense in the game, including 173 through the air. 49-21 win over Bucknell they're at home, Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium. Navy offense ran for 265 yards and 4 touchdowns while throwing, as I said, 173 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dabo Fofana led the rushing attack with 82 yards and a touchdown on 8 carries. Brad Horvath completed 7 of 12 pass attempts for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns, while John Heidenreich 4 catches for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, as I said, senior fullback Dabo Fofana, he got the first score for Navy on a second drive of the game. Ran 49 yards for a touchdown, and then Navy in the second quarter scored 22 unanswered points. Alex Teska scored a 3-yard touchdown run with 14:56 left in the second quarter. And then, as I mentioned, Eli Heidenreich got a touchdown. It was a 9-yard touchdown pass reception for Eli Heidenreich from Brad Horvath. And then Heidenreich came up with Horvath threw a screw pass to junior Brandon Chapman, who ran 42 yards for a touchdown after the touchdown pass. And he actually got the 2-point conversion after that from pass Horvath to Heidenreich. And then Heidenreich scored again early in the third quarter on a 20-yard touchdown pass from Brad. Also on defense, Jackson Campbell, who ended the day with 1 career tackle, and senior linebacker Colin Ramos had 10 tackles apiece on defense, while Luke Pires had 1.5 sacks and 2.5 tackles for loss. And Navy's 2-0. Looking to go 2-0 rather. They're 1-0 now. In their game next week, this coming weekend, they're going to be hosting Temple at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium. Now, Temple actually just got blown out. It's a 51-3 loss to Oklahoma. Big blowout win there by the Sooners. And Air Force also had their home opener, and they had a 21-6 win over Merrimack. First time they played Merrimack. Sophomore running back Owen Allen led 8 separate rushers. They used 8 separate rushers in this game with 63 yards, 16 carries. John Boucher, quarterback, 5th career game and first career start, finished 6 for 14 for 71, while and he got 9 attempts, rush for 37 yards on 9 attempts.
Okay.
And,
So they beat up on Merrimack.
what was 21-6 win, so not a bad showing for Merrimack.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Falcons are going to be hosting division rival San Jose State this weekend. San Jose State just had a 42-24 win over Sacramento State. So
You know the coaches there. Ken Niumatalolo, the former Navy coach.
yeah,
So they're giving. Is that game in Marine in Annapolis? Or is it? No, that's out of Air Force. I'm sorry.
the San Jose State's at Air Force. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm wondering if San Jose State will get an invitation to play in Annapolis, Maryland. We'll have to see. That'd be kind of interesting. I don't think it's going to happen. Anyway, Chuck, do you have anything about the other American conference teams?
Yeah, Ken, quite a few great games this past weekend. A number of curb stomp battles, not like what Army experienced. For instance, James Madison took a 30-7 victory over Charlotte, while we had a shutout. Memphis against North Alabama, 40-0.
For Memphis,
Yeah, meanwhile,
Memphis is definitely looking to be the best team in the conference.
yeah, I would have to agree.
And
meanwhile,
we don't see them this year.
Yeah, also had Sam Houston 34-14 for Rice, so solid victory there as well. Yeah, meanwhile, South Florida had a near shutout, 48-3 over Bethune-Cookman. A good one. And East Carolina, another near shutout, 42-3 over Norfolk State. That was a good one. And a close one between South Alabama and North Texas, 38-52, with North Texas emerging victorious.
Okay. I guess week 2 is going to start to really tell in the American Athletic Conference as you have the team starting their conference schedule. And we'll get a real look at how competitive this is. But it does look like Memphis is the team to beat. Army's not going to win this year unless they got to the championship game. And I don't know how long Memphis is going to be in the conference. Anyone think they may move elsewhere in the not too distant future?
I think they're primed for being plucked for sure.
Yeah. Well, conference commissioner Tim Perenni. Well, I'm going to see if he'll join us one week. I had a chance to talk with him down in the media day in Arlington in July. He's got contingency plans for everything, but we will see.
You got to look at both they and Tulane, both pretty good candidates to move on. I was on those AAC games. I was surprised at Rice for sure. I was surprised that they got beat. And that was quite interesting. And I was surprised by I watched a bit of the Air Force game and they just looked flat.
Yep.
Well, I would say Army did not look flat. Army looked like they played the way they had been coached all through spring and summer practice. And now we're going to face a significant challenge. Do we want to go do our, anybody have any comments? Jack, who does Navy and Air Force play again this week?
Navy is going to be playing Temple. Temple actually just lost. It was a 51-3 blowout win for Oklahoma over Temple.
Wow.
And then Air Force is going to be facing San Jose State, who just won. It was they had a 42-24 win over Sacramento State. So, and both of those, so that's those games there.
Yeah. Well, Troy Calhoun and Ken Niumatalolo know each other pretty well. They've played each other probably almost 15 years.
So I got a couple comments.
Go ahead.
One, I just wanted to add to Richard's top 10, and that is to make mention that Florida State actually lost twice in the past week plus, because they lost just last night to Boston College. So I would expect to see Florida State, who had high hopes for a gigantic season and a BCS run, to tumble completely out of the top 25 after that brutal first week that they had. Where the service academies are concerned, I spent some time, you know, I can't honestly sit and watch a whole Navy or Air Force football game. I just can't do it. But I like to at least try to watch it and see if I can gather any facts about, you know, our biggest opponents in any given season and how they're looking. And so my takeaway is that it's really hard from the very first week to tell, you know, and come out and say, hey, you know, this service academy is better than the other two service academies, or rank order them one way or another. All three played FCS teams. All three of those FCS teams were ranked pretty much in the same place as their expectation and strength coming into the season. And when you look at the stats from the game, these are the stats that stick out. Army is the only team that did not commit any turnovers. Army is the team that had the most yards rushing by 100 yards. And but everything else looked pretty similar. Time of possession for between Army and Lehigh, Navy, Bucknell, Air Force, and Merrimack, they were almost identical. It's uncanny how close they really were. But the fact is that in the Navy game, Bucknell, when Bucknell wasn't screwing around and turning the ball over, they were moving the ball really well and pretty easily on Navy. It did appear to me at times, and then in the end, when they got their act together, they racked a couple more touchdowns up to make the score a little more respectable. As a matter of fact, it was 35-14 at one point. So Air Force, just as Steve said, they just looked flat. Their offense looked absolutely flat. And you can attribute this to either A, they had a bad day, or B, Merrimack is just a better FCS team than people gave them credit for. And just to refresh our minds about how a service academy can win a very ugly game, earlier today, I actually pulled up the Army Citadel game from 2020, which I rank as possibly the ugliest win in Jeff Monken's time at Army. Because Citadel just really stuck it to Army for 4 quarters, man. And we were lucky to walk away with a win in that game. And Merrimack really did stick it to the Air Force Academy. They came to play. And were it not for a couple of fortuitous turnovers, I think that the score might have been the other way around on Air Force. But either one, I'm not going to jump on a high horse and say Army, you know, 100% we're the best service academy, although we are. But based on where we are at this point of the season, this next week is going to be a much more telling moment for all 3 service academies to see where we really are.
Okay. Richard, what are 3 games you're going to watch this weekend in the top 20? Give me 3 games.
3 games over the weekend. I'll be keeping an eye on Texas and number 10 Michigan. That will be at 12 noon.
That's a good one.
Also, as well, it'll be, let's see what else. You will have South Florida taking on number 4 Alabama, and another one will be also the number 14 Tennessee Volunteers and number 24 NC State Wolfpack.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Richard. Okay, let's do our lightning round and predict how Army is going to do Saturday against Florida Atlantic. I looked it up. It's going to be 89 degrees at game time.
Ooh.
With 70% humidity.
That's
Coach Munkin, when asked about the weather, said you can't control the weather. You went through a litany of things that you can't control. You can only control how you play yourself and how your team performs. And then he went in and said, these guys sleep outdoors, in 40-degree weather, and they get rained on, and then they get out, and by the day it's 87 degrees. And I always like it when he says, the rain doesn't stop the U.S. Army. Well, the heat doesn't either. So it's gonna be a bit of a challenge. Okay, Richard, what do you think the score is going to be?
Oh, my score on this game. Oh, I'm gonna say this is gonna be a good win for Army. I'm gonna go. Sign me up for something like 31-17 Army.
31-17 Army from Richard. Okay. Chuck, what do you think?
All right. I'm pretty much on the same page as Richard there. I think it's going to be a solid victory, not quite as close as the season opener. I'm leaning towards, I would say, 38-14.
You think Army's going to score 38 points? Okay. Very good. And Jack, what's your prediction on the game?
I like Army in this game as well. I think it might be a little bit closer though, so I'm going to go. I'm going to say 24-17.
Okay. I think I'm leaning in your direction. Okay. Sam, would you like to go, or are you still pondering? We could go to Steve Shalou, who is always ready. Steve, you want to tell us your prediction?
I mean, I'd love to be as optimistic as Richard and Chuck. I think this is going to be a backyard brawl. It's our first real test. It is a must win for us. We have to start the season fast because the end part of our season is a gauntlet, and we need to make sure that we are securing our 6 or 7 wins prior to, we get to that point where we got to go against the likes of UTSA and Air Force and Notre Dame. So this is a pretty must-win situation for us. But I think it's going to be pretty tight. I think we're Army 24, FAU 21.
24-21 for Steve Shalou. Okay. And Sam?
Yeah, I won't deny, I definitely wanted to hear Steve's comment first. And we're going to South Florida. There's no hurricanes in the forecast, but I do want to say that I do have a plan. In the event of a hurricane, I have these instructions. So all Army fans watching here, this is all you got to know. All right. And I'm a veteran of the Army Duke game that was in the middle of a hurricane a few years ago. So I can tell you, but I think the weather's going to be just fine. It's funny, a difference a week makes, because a week ago, Steve and I were both like, you guys were predicting a close game for the Lehigh game, and we were like, man, are you kidding me? If that's the final score, we got some issues. Now it's the opposite. You guys are optimistic, man. Look, I would love to throw out a score similar to that. I would love to have that much confidence to say, yeah, we're just going to go in there and we're going to steamroller FAU. But honestly, look, they went up to Michigan State in Michigan State's house, and they backyard brawled Michigan State for 4 quarters. So I have to believe that they're going to come back and defend their house exactly the way they were fighting Michigan State toe to toe. So it's going to be a real brawl, and Army cannot afford to make some of the reading assignment mistakes on defense that they were making against Lehigh. They've got in that line of scrimmage on defense. I think the offense is going to continue its solid play. But in the end, this is going to be a really close game. And so I was thinking more in terms of 21-17 Army.
Okay.
I wonder if Michael Graffine is going to be secretly rooting for the Army team. I bet he is.
Okay. Well, it's interesting what you said, that FAU had a backyard brawl with Michigan State. sometimes teams after a game like that, they have a hangover. They're not quite the same the next week because they put out such an effort against a tough opponent like FAU did. I assume coming back home, they'll have a lot of incentives and newfound energy. Coach Munkin said they're a very good team. Coach Munkin was saying that this is a track meet. Florida Atlantic would win the track meet, but it's not. He said they got a huge offensive line. Well, that may help. We'll see. But Army played very well in its first week. Offensively, defense is growing. I think, and I asked Coach Munkin this in the media session. How can Army put a pass rush together, and also play back defense to have the defensive backs do coverage? And I think that's where this game and a lot of Army games this year may come down to is how well the defense can stop the long ball from opponents, because they're going to get tested. And when you got 3 young defensive backs out of your 4. I liked what Steve suggested about a 24-21 win. I think it could be close. It could be decided by a field goal. And so I'm going to go with Army 27-24 over Florida Atlantic University. And it's going to be warm, but there's going to be quite a few Army fans at the game, I'm sure, and looking forward to it. Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, if you do look at the Michigan State game against them, Michigan State did all that they could to keep them in that ball game. The number of penalties, the targeting, they didn't play a typical Big Ten type football game. I don't know if that score would have been that tight if they had played. I think if they had played a more disciplined game, they're going to get a disciplined game from Army, and our offense is going to really put a squeeze on them. It's really going to come back. It's going to come down to that defensive line and linebackers. And are we staying lane disciplined so that, and as soon as we started talking about, lane discipline, I thought of that Boston College game. And I watched that Boston College quarterback last night do the same things to Florida State as they did to Army last year. We just got to stay disciplined on our lanes and keep contained on this quarterback who's really talented. And I think we can really grind it to a couple of key possessions at the end of the ball game to win this thing out. So I'm anxious to see what type of jump and what Woody puts together for a package against this team. Maybe he was just playing conservative against Lehigh. I don't know, but they've got to step it up, and I think we got a great chance.
Okay, very good. I've got one question for you, Steve, and that is how Connor Finucane did in your expert judgment. Kind of split the game with Jordan Law at left tackle. How do you think Connor Finucane did coming back?
I watched him pretty closely. I thought he did look small, but he really, it was good to see him back out there. And I think the overall offensive line in general just was phenomenal. Connor was good to have back out there for the reasons we talked about last week. And I think he'll build upon his success here again this week. He'll end up being and our offensive line, like I said earlier, gets dinged up quite a bit. So he'll be valuable in terms of filling a position there where if we need to swing somebody out to another position, he'll be able to do that. But some of the rookies that are on the offensive line and some of the names that were first-year starters that showed up on that top 15 list were really encouraging and surprising. So I'm excited about the line as a whole. You will start seeing, and I liken it to what Navy used to do when they used to get in the fourth quarter. And I remember one game when they were playing against Wake Forest, and they knew that they were going to run the fullback 8 or 9 times in a row, and they couldn't stop them. And they just ground the clock out and just ground it at will. I think this line has that potential of being able to do that and controlling the line of scrimmage in the fourth quarter. And that's exciting to have because and the more success you have in that, the more attitude the line gets about we can't be stopped. And once they get that swagger, look out. So I'm excited about the play in general, and I think Connor's the leader of that group.
Okay, very good. And so a number of us will be joining Richard down in Boca Raton, Florida, for Saturday's game, 12 noon start. And
Well,
I will be covering the Association of the U.S. Army conference tomorrow in Arlington, Virginia, where they're going to focus on Army aviation. So watch for my reports on Twitter and also on LinkedIn. I'm going to talk to General Les Smith, hopefully start of the day, and then get down to Boca for this weekend's game. So I want to thank everybody. I know everyone waited for me because I was traveling this afternoon and early evening. So thank Richard Miller down in South Florida,
you're welcome, Ken. Thank you.
and Chuck Donegan out on Long Island,
Pleasure as always, Ken.
and Jack McGurk in Pelham.
Happy to be here.
And in South Jersey, we've got Steve Shalou.
Beat FAU.
And from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama, we've got Colonel Sam Houston. Colonel, thank you.
Thank you. In Nate Woody, we trust. And I'm looking forward to seeing all you guys who are going to be at the game in Boca Raton. See you
Okay.
there.
It'll be fun. Well, hopefully, Nate Woody will be doing a media talk tomorrow. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and our second week of Army football, really getting to be really warming up in the college football season. And I just want to again remind our audience that we're Camp Vets Media. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military veterans, and since 2008, and we are very proud to do so. So anyway, thanks everybody, and we will see you on Saturday, 12 noon at Florida Atlantic. Thanks for watching.